Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in to this latest episode of Tech Tips. My name is Scott Spatz. I'm the president of Cooperative Systems, a New England-based IT managed service provider. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about your remote workforces and how you can keep your employees productive and secure so that they can all remain the rock stars that they already are, but remotely. So supporting remote work is certainly nothing new for really any organization. Just about any company has had some level of remote capabilities set up for many years now. But supporting that remote workforce for your entire company for an extended and unknown period of time, that's really what's new here. And with office closures and the public health crisis we've all been dealing with for many months now, that's what's new. And it's a new environment for everybody to be working in and day out, and really not traversing back and forth to the office and only relying on smaller components of your overall IT infrastructure. And a recent survey from Procurement of over 600 workers working from homes found that just about 70% of them love the flexibility of working from home. So even though they appreciate the flexibility, it's still not easy. There's still challenges. There's things that everybody deals with day in and day out that are a challenge as it relates to keeping that infrastructure running well, running securely, and running efficiently. So a few things we're going to talk about today is, number one, hardware challenges, the devices that we all use and do our remote work from. Second, the difficulty we all encounter, and certainly the IT departments or technology staff encounter on procuring and provisioning the devices that we use, those laptops, those desktops, the phones, the printers, anything else that we use in our quote unquote home offices. Next, we're going to talk with issues with managed desktops and virtual workspaces. Then we're going to get into line of business applications and how you manage proper access. And when I say proper, meaning efficient, secure access that doesn't inhibit your productivity. Next, we're going to get into desk phones. And yes, people still use desk phones. They're still a thing. So that's got to be considered in the overall umbrella of what needs to be supported here. And then lastly is locking it all down with a good cybersecurity monitoring platform and infrastructure, as well as training your staff on good best practices to protect your systems and your data. So solving your hardware challenges. A one-size strategy, one-size-fits-all strategy will certainly not be good for your staff, not be good for overall productivity. Everybody needs something a little bit different, and every department within your organization needs to have a little bit different setup based on their needs and how they interact with your technology. So instead, consider your equipment that you're deploying to your staff by role. So are they, a typical knowledge worker? Are they frontline support staff? Are they, a simplified user only using small components of your line of business applications? Or are they a power user and they're using multiple different applications? They're in those applications, using them intensely day in and day out. Or are they browser dwellers? Are they doing most of what they do internet-based and email-based, and they don't really need to have access to your accounting system or your ERP system or your healthcare record system if you're a healthcare organization? Solving difficult procurement and provisioning issues. So this is what everybody's been dealing with over the past 6 months, is how do we get the necessary equipment into our staff's homes and places that they're working from remotely. And how do we continue to maintain them and secure them and keep them running smoothly throughout this time that we're all working remotely? So again, having a broken out set of equipment that we use per job type will help you define what are those pieces of equipment that each type of worker needs. And if you have zero interest in being a technology admin, then certainly consult with a managed service provider that has the expertise on what each of those types of remote workers looks like and what their needs and dependencies are. And virtual CIO services that those managed service providers provide can give you the visibility and control over all of your IT. And budgeting is part of this, and strategic planning is part of this. Having a good 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year IT roadmap of that equipment, how you're procuring it, when you're refreshing it, how you're deploying it, and who's going to be responsible for deploying it, how you're going to provision it ahead of time before it gets out to your employees' home office. And again, with the different job types and job roles in mind, making sure that that's delivered to your staff in a easy to connect package with as little uniqueness or issues as possible for them to hook it up and get it working in their home office. Next, solving managed desktop and virtual workspace issues. So quite a few options to provide remote access to your software. There's a number of different ways you can access your systems and data remotely. And we also want to make sure that you're segregating their personal data, your staff's personal data, from your company data. So the first thing there to consider is standardizing to cloud-based virtual desktops. So we want to keep our company data as much in a controlled environment as possible, so that it's not, data isn't living on those endpoint devices that exist all over the place. So how can we centralize that data within a cloud-based environment that gives a virtual desktop access to your staff? That's really the best scenario, because that gives us the control, the protection, the cybersecurity protections, the backup and disaster recovery protections that we need to properly maintain and control our data. And then it also keeps that data from potentially getting into the wrong hands. So we want to leverage the cloud so employees can work on any device and without losing that control over the access and data. And that's a point there, is that one of the key #1 benefits of having virtual desktop strategies in place and technologies in place is that it can be accessed from just about any type of device. So the dependencies on the device that you're accessing the data from and the applications from is lessened, because all of the processing and computing is happening on a virtual instance and a virtual desktop in the cloud. And the last point to make there is working with an outsourced IT company can certainly provide some value here, because they know how to design these systems. They typically may have their own data center and data center services that they can manage and provide these services for you. Maybe it's a co-location space, which is a different type of a flavor of cloud technology. But certainly the knowledge and expertise they can provide to designing the proper solution, and again, making sure that your data and your systems are as secure as possible, and that you're providing the right tools to your staff to stay productive. Solving access issues to line of business applications. This is probably the #1 challenge, is how we deliver the applications that our staff need to them in a secure manner, and in a in a manner in which they only have access to what they need. So the good news here is that if you have Office 365 or a Google Suite subscription, you already have that in place, and you're already set from a communications perspective and an email perspective and a chat. And if you use Teams within Office 365 from a collaboration perspective on files and data. So standardizing to one of these platforms is certainly recommended. And companies with over, say, 300 employees who use Office 365 can certainly easily add email and licenses if you're not using that already, and you still have a premise-based email system, such as Microsoft Exchange server on site. And larger organizations can benefit from enterprise licenses that include added security and management features. So there's a lot to take advantage of there as well, and making sure that those features are used properly. And also, just to comment on line of business applications too, going back to the last slide about the virtual desktop, is that for any of your specific line of business applications, such as like if you're a manufacturing firm and you run an ERP type application, line of business application, that's served up in the cloud or can be served up in the cloud and deployed to your staff via a virtual desktop. And that, again, controls access to the different components of that ERP platform that they may need access to for their job role. Next is solving phone service challenges and staying in touch with their colleagues and vendors and customers and whom you do business with day in and day out. So having a good infrastructure in place for your employees is certainly paramount, and they should be putting their best foot forward. Companies who use Microsoft Teams can certainly add a phone number that supports calling, so that's one option. Just like the Microsoft version, we have the Google-like offering for that, which is the Google Voice, and G Suite customers for organizations with 10 or fewer employees. And if a more professional setup is needed, such as a voice over IP phone system and leveraging what you would consider an office type phone system that you probably have in your office already and have been accustomed to using over the many previous years, there's cloud-based telephone services and unified communications platforms of which can be leveraged to still have that office-based telephone system, still be able to extension dial to your colleagues and peers, still be able to take calls from your vendors and your customers just as if you were sitting in your office, still access your voicemail, and all the while being able to do that from your smartphone that you use day in and day out, or from what's called a soft phone application that you can put on your computer in your home office, or having a desk phone on your desk in your home office that acts and functions just like it did in your office, your actual physical office space. And a big component of the overall solution and best practices for a remote workforce is having a good cybersecurity plan in place. So solving your cybersecurity issues before you get hacked. So last but definitely not least is security. If you need to connect into your network, consider a VPN. VPN namely will protect and secure how access into your corporate resources is controlled and secured. Next point, this is a big point too, is we want to make sure that your staff are not using public and unsecured Wi-Fi. They should be using their internet access at their homes where they know which devices are connecting to their home Wi-Fi. If you have to use a public Wi-Fi, you should definitely be only connecting via a VPN to your corporate resources. We want to ensure that applications and operating systems are up to date, using two-factor authentication, which is a big point here. Two-factor authentication has been around for many years, and it's been a nice add-on for cybersecurity measures. It's really becoming now a necessity for a good and solid cybersecurity protection plan. And then as well as having strong passwords managed by a password manager tool and being able to store those unique passwords and complex passwords in a password manager tool so that you can use complex passwords and you're not needing to try to remember those weird funky passwords with uppercase, lowercase, symbols, numbers, etc. So just to recap here, so number one, starts with hardware and making sure you have a good strategy in place for what hardware your staff are using and how they're receiving that hardware and how you're deploying that hardware and keeping a standard infrastructure. Number two, communication is critical, just like social media to a reality TV star. So making sure that communication lines are available, open, and secured. Number three, productivity, monitoring, and management, just like a virtual CIO service. So like a CIO or a CTO would do in a large corporation in managing the overall productivity, monitoring, and management of your IT resources. Small businesses can take advantage of that via a virtual CIO. And that wraps it up. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Tech Tips, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.